Welcome to episode 238 of the Outdoor Biz Podcast with life and career coach, outdoor guide, and wilderness therapy instructor Kai Roche, brought to you this month by Koalatry. Koalatry designs eco-minded gear and apparel for the adventurer and everyone. From athletes and photographers to your average city folks and weekend warriors. Summiting the tallest peaks or lounging around town with friends, their products are practical, stylish, and functional. Visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/Koalatry and grab something stylish for your next peak bag adventure or late-night pizza run. Visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/Koalatry. Koalatry is Coalatree. We're going international today and speaking with Sojourn and Villa San Carlos co-owner Kai Roche from Aguadilla, Puerto Rico. Welcome to the show, Kai.
Thanks for having me, Rick. Really stoked on being on the show and have loved all the previous episodes, of which I'm still making my way through. So excited to be on.
Awesome. Well, thanks. I'm glad we were able to connect too. It's funny how this has expanded my listener base and friend base and connections. It's been really fun to do that. And you're in Puerto Rico, right?
I am in Aguadilla, Puerto Rico.
Nice. How's the weather there today? Probably pretty nice.
Yeah, it's actually, it's usually always warm.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've had some good rain lately. I wasn't around for those two tropical storms that came through. I was actually in the States for that. But yeah, it's been pretty nice out, and yeah, we're enjoying the lovely breeze and sound of birds and all that good stuff. So
yeah, cool. Yeah, I'm enjoying the sound of hunters. Hunting season opened yesterday, September 1. I guess they must be hunting rabbits or something, because this is a pretty rural neighborhood. So I hope they're not shooting rifles that close. Didn't sound like it.
Yeah. Well.
How often do you get to the States?
I think we go about 4 or 5 times a year.
Oh, wow.
Just thinking off the top of my head. I think it's probably going to be lower this year, probably maybe 3. Mm-hmm. But we try and stay for a good chunk of time. This last trip was 10 days, but I think the next one I'll probably be there for a month.
Oh, wow, cool. Where do you typically go?
We have a lot of family on the West Coast. So Washington was the last trip, and Colorado for a wedding. And then this next trip will be Oregon and maybe
Yeah, nice, cool.
California. So
awesome. And how did you get introduced to the outdoors?
I kind of always was involved to one level or another. I was born outside. My mom was very hippie and, enjoyed growing up herself in third world countries, collecting bugs with my grandfather, who's an entomologist.
Wow.
And she got a degree in cultural anthropology. And so the outdoors was never a separate thing. It was just like part of life for her growing up, and she passed that on to us through creating a lot of opportunities, one of which was when we were pretty poor. After my parents got divorced, my mom took us, and we lived in a really small trailer, I think it's 13 feet long by 8 feet wide. Yeah. So we lived out of that on a friend's property, and in California, up in Dixon, where there's definitely more rattlesnakes in 10 square feet than I've ever seen anywhere else in my life.
Yeah.
But it was a good experience as a kid. You got to walk around and had free range of all this space. And my mom was really trusting in that she had seen kids grow up in, areas where there were lions and hyenas and very venomous snakes. And so for her, rattlesnakes were it's just something you teach your kids about, and they can manage that risk on their own. So
yeah, it's interesting. I think kids are pretty adaptable. I've never had kids, but all the friends I've known have had kids, and being a kid myself, you pretty much you just adapt to whatever's going on. You become aware and know what stuff to avoid and what stuff not to avoid. And if you get burned a couple of times, it reinforces that avoiding part.
Yeah. And I think, kids are far more aware, I think, oftentimes than adults are, because they have less preoccupies their mind or their brain. At least probably back in those days, it was more so that way. I think now with technology, it might be, they're probably less aware because they're distracted by things that are probably not as important as being present in the moment.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Especially in areas with rattlesnakes.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we have those here. Yeah. So you've had a solid career as a guide. Was that your first outdoor job?
It was. I kind of launched into it. I always jump into things kind of feet first. Mm-hmm. My first good legitimate job was with kids, and I remember being really proud of bringing home a paycheck that had taxes deducted from it because I always worked under the table. But then I knew that I wanted to get back into the outdoors and work in wilderness therapy. So I worked a bunch of jobs with, kids, nannying and working at a preschool. And then I applied for a position that on paper I wasn't qualified for, but I had a lot of experience. I'd already gone through wilderness therapy as a student, as a client. And so I remember pretty clearly being asked, you don't have a 4-year degree, because that was one of the requirements. Mm-hmm. And I said, nope, I don't. Apologetically. So
yeah, right.
And they said, well, what do you think about that? I said, well, I don't actually think it's necessary for this job. It's about connecting with people. It's about pulling from resources that you're recommending to them. It's about life experience. To have all of that, I don't think a 4-year degree made more life experience than what I've gotten to this point. And so waiting another 4 years when I can be helping students now doesn't seem as helpful. So luckily they thought that was a decent answer. And I got invited to a training. And so I had to do 2 different trainings with 2 different companies before I decided on one. And they were right after each other. And I ended up working in wilderness therapy for, I guess I still am. So it's been about 10 years now.
Wow, yeah. A lot of your guiding work is very therapeutic. What inspires that?
Well, the wilderness therapy industry for me was huge in creating a change for me. Specifically, the program I went through, which Second Nature Entrada, which is now Evoke Entrada, great program. But it also opened up my eyes to the idea that you could work in an industry that was a healing industry, and also one that's they like to call it a field. So because it's a lot of those folks are all coming from a background, but the field of wilderness therapy. Just combining the outdoors and healing is to me, it's a no-brainer. My mom's a healer. She's an acupuncturist and massage therapist. And my family's always had these great stories of the outdoors, and I really wanted to have a life that was worth telling about, and sharing with others, and excite in that excitement and joy and adventure and exploration. And then learning the skills was always something that I was always passionate about, even from a young child, like making bow and arrow out of bamboo and stuff like that, and ancestral skills, or what people call primitive skills, even though they're technologically incredible.
Yeah, it's amazing what you could do. Yeah, with what's out there. Yeah, I taught at an 6th grade outdoor camp right out of college, and we taught the kids a lot of that stuff too. It's pretty fun. Yeah, pretty incredible. Yeah, there's a process we all kind of go through in the outdoors, especially in long-term extended expeditions where you're out for more than just a week at a time or 2 weeks at a time. You're out there for 10.5 weeks, or you're out there for 3 months. There's a process in there that just changes how you think, how you act, how you feel. Well, you start shedding the layers of civilization, right? The first day out, you kind of, that's kind of dirty. You're not really used to it. But then after you've been out for so long, you've lost all that stuff that you use to navigate through civilized life, and you're just one with the outdoors. It's awesome. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, and you start, your tempo changes because your circadian rhythms are connected to the earth, and you're more attuned to the weather, and your senses pick up, and you're more aware of what's going on around you. On a therapeutic level, it's really challenging. That the cool thing about these programs is that it's therapy 100% of the time. It's not just when you do a group or when you have a sit down mentoring session or when you have clinical sessions. It's constant. So if that give you feedback all the time, you get feedback from your peers, you're always in your head thinking about the decisions you made that led you there, the decisions you're going to make when you leave, what you have to deal with in the day to day. It's cool. And being in a relationship with folks that are process is really fun for me and challenging on a level that I don't see in many other professions, but yeah.
And so you own Via San Carlos Aguadilla. I'm assuming that's a resort of some sort, and then Sojourn Consulting. Tell our listeners about those two ventures.
Yeah, so I think calling it a resort would be a little
maybe not resort is the right word.
Grandiose. So we bought a property here in Aguadilla, and the configuration of the property was it had a long-term apartment built in the back of the house itself, and then the master bedroom was also separated with its own private entrance. So we turned both the master bedroom and bathroom with its own kitchenette into an Airbnb, and the long-term rental into the other unit into a long-term or short-term rental.
So it's a mini resort.
And so it's a mini resort. So that's cool. We like that it's residential, and we like that we're really trying to integrate a lot of, my partner, Katie Lane, has a background in hospitality and management, and she works remotely. So we wanted to find a way to combine both of our experience, mine in guiding and outdoor work and wilderness therapy and experiential education, sustainability, that kind of stuff, with hers. And this seemed like a great opportunity. And so, we operate that, and we've got plans to expand. We have one unit up and running now, and another unit that will be, actually both units are running currently. And then we have plans to expand in what we offer as far as services go.
Mm-hmm. Is that a consulting piece then, the services that you offer?
No, these will be separate.
Okay.
Those will be experiential offerings on site. So the hope is that eventually we'll be able to combine, have some overlap between the consulting work and the location by hosting guides or certification bodies or classes to run specific trips or courses using us at base camp. So
makes sense, yeah.
Come to Puerto Rico and tap into a whole community that you otherwise wouldn't have a connection to, and stay and run a course.
Yep, cool.
And that to me is, I think it's quintessential to find a way to bring more commerce and mobility and business to Puerto Rico, but also find a way to empower individuals in the process. So really looking at wilderness first aid, wilderness first responder, that kind of work, as well as potentially a swiftwater rescue course taught here during the rafting season.
Oh, cool.
Which we do have.
Yeah. Oh, I've heard there's good rafting over there,
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty good. It's just Puerto Rico is kind of an undiscovered location as far as it's certainly not as developed as a lot of the Northwest for things like climbing and mountain biking and rafting, sea kayaking. But
I think it still has this reputation too of being so far away, but it's right there. It's like
it's not far.
Yeah, exactly. You can almost swim to it.
Yeah,
it's pretty close. Yeah,
and Michael. So the consulting work kind of came out of my love for working with guides. I've spent most of my guiding career training guides for wilderness programs, mentoring and coaching guides, and so I wanted to combine the consulting work with the coaching work. And so the consulting is more specific to organizations, while the coaching work is more for guides that are up and coming in the outdoor industry that want more than just their basic training and their basic exposure from the programs they work for. They want someone to help mentor them through that process and give some insight and some breadth and depth of experience beyond what they might be exposed to.
When you're probably focused less on the technical skills and more on the soft skills that you don't get in some of the guiding courses.
Yeah, so soft skills are definitely on the rise. I think that's awesome. But there's also a level of meta skills, which are, more cognitive. So we talk a lot more about risk management. We talk about different theories in outdoor leadership, like conditional outdoor leadership theory, situational outdoor leadership theory. Talk about different approaches to risk management, whether that's different risk management scales and how you apply those moment in the outdoors without having to go through all the paperwork, but just necessarily looking at how to manage risk and how to empower individuals, right, and bring your clients into your team, essentially helping them, educating them into this empowered place of, we'll take that responsibility on.
So how has the pandemic impacted your businesses? I mean, there's less travel, so I'm sure people are not visiting as frequently as they were.
Well, we get a lot of local visitors here in Puerto Rico, San Carlos, which is great because we're on the northwest side. It's a little bit more relaxed than San Juan. So when the executive orders allow us, we do take visitors. I don't know if you've checked in on the executive orders in Puerto Rico, but they're kind of all over the place.
No,
about every 2 weeks or a week and a half, the governor changes what is or isn't allowed. So it's certainly put a hitch in a lot of our plans as far as even getting outside. Like Sundays, we're not allowed to go out. Everyone's supposed to basically stay at home.
Wow.
Almost a complete lockdown. You can only go to the grocery store or the doctor.
Interesting.
So Sundays are pretty much off, or people will come Saturday and stay for Sunday because they'd rather be stuck at our place than, traveling home and then stuck there.
Right.
Which is good.
These regs are all over the boards here too. It's it's a very dynamic situation. I think nobody really has a handle on it, and people around the world, some of them are following the rules and regs, and some of them are turning their nose up at them. But it's interesting. I guess not surprising.
I'm glad I'm not in government right now. I think it would be chaotic at its best.
I'm glad I'm a bishop.
Yeah.
It's pretty quiet. We were talking earlier, how do you think the value of diverse backgrounds impacts outdoor businesses?
Well, I think, especially from hearing a lot of your podcasts, I think it's becoming more commonplace to see people moving laterally or even taking a step down from one industry to another. So talking about diversity as a function of previous experience specifically, not necessarily age, religion, sexual orientation, etc., but more just looking at how different skill sets overlap and maybe can be reapplied within the outdoor industry. To me is pretty interesting that there seems to be more of that happening instead of the industry kind of culturing up the same community of people. There's so much growth over the last, 25 to 50 years that it is moving at a nice clip. There's like some fun hybrid companies out there that are, bringing a lot of tech into the outdoors. And that having a varied background, whether you start off as a guide or you start off in textiles or something else entirely, and then you want to make that switch to the outdoor industry, I've found it's a lot of fun to help people write their resume and set themselves up for a really fun interview with bringing their previous experience and finding a way to translate that nicely into their new role. And so I think for students, this really hasn't been discussed as much. When I was in school for an outdoor degree, which is actually fairly recent, but they didn't really discuss like taking jobs that may not be in line with what you want to do overall, but will specifically align you to get additional skills, which is something my mom kind of introduced me to. And it's valuable and worthwhile, I think, to create that diversity in your background. because it will communicate to a recruiter that's really paying attention, or HR manager that's really paying attention, to see that you can do something that's not completely in line, but it does have catalyzing effects. So like, for example, I'd say project management and marketing, those two are really high demand skills right now in the outdoor industry, in that not just products industry, but also experiential. Companies are starting to see that project management and project planning are valuable for even planning out how the season's going to look.
Right.
They're going to market, how marketing and their experiential product overlap and how that influences one another. So having someone that has good foundations in both is really valuable. So,
yeah, I think it's that worldly piece, right? The more worldly experience you have, you've learned different things from different people, whether it be a specific technical skill or just how to get along with people. I mean, I think those, those things are all important. And I think as the outdoor industry grows and gets bigger and gets more sophisticated, more and more people coming in realize that and take that into consideration. Yeah, that's good. Yeah. And so do you think there's ways to evolve one's practice in outdoors and organizations, positions, opportunities that will foster growth? Like, I think we talked about guides and outdoor educators, for example.
Yeah, I'd say one thing that I really appreciated reading is there's a study called The Program's Perspective, and I can't remember what the rest of the title is, but basically talks about how there's a serious advantage to hiring guides that have either a view of continual education and or continual certification, even if it's not directly applicable to their job. So, for example, a lot of outdoor behavioral health care programs, some of them offer advanced certifications in like first responder or WEMT, but there are fewer of them, or there are maybe not even any of them that will do that with certifications that they're not using. So if they're not exposed to avalanche environments, they probably won't help their guides get certifications in AVI 1 or AVI 2. Right. Yet that study actually talks about the value of overlapping different technical and meta skills, like cognitive skills or ways of looking at risk management and how they influence one another. And it also, there's a lot of discussion these days around obviously supporting your staff in their desire to continue growing. So I think there's a lot of value to finding someone that is either a mentor or an organization that will continue to invest in you. Or if you want to do the outdoors professionally, if you want to work in the outdoors your whole life, finding ways to continually sharpen those skills or add new skills to your toolbox. Right. There's a lot of certifications that do that, but there's also just getting out and being outside and choosing different sports to engage in.
Yeah, exactly. Do all the activities. So, camping, hiking, climbing, biking, all that stuff. Yeah. And I think as the outdoor industry continues to grow too, that's one of the things on my show is I have people from all aspects of the outdoor industry. It's not just the outdoor retail brand portion, right? It's guys like you who've done a bunch of different things working with, getting people outside, actually, educators, guides, and I think all those skills translate, whether you've worked on the business side and want to get into the guiding side or worked on the guiding side and want to get into the business side, those things all, play off one another. My perspective, as coming from a guide, I was a river guide and taught at an outdoor school, so it helped me immensely, I think.
Yeah, I find it hard to believe, and I know that this does happen, but I also wonder what the effects of that are, that people are also hiring individuals to work in outdoor companies that either have little or no professional outdoor guiding experience. But
that's a whole nother podcast.
Yeah, that's a good point of view, I guess. But it can be I think it just illuminates a lot more of what your potential customers, your potential clients are going through, to have that direct experience to relate with them.
Yep, I agree. If you've got experience on the ground, you're going to be more valuable to a product designer, product manager than if you don't. And we talk about that. A bunch of people have come on the show and said, you got to get out there and put that jacket you're designing on and wear it out in the weather, so that you know that if it rains, if it's really dumping, this little seam you have is running down your neck. You got to fix that. And you don't know that until you get out there and wear the jacket. I think Doug Robinson brought that up. And it's just, you got to be outside. You got to get outside. Yeah.
Yeah. There's a big difference between someone who kayaks for, single day trips and someone who's had 25 days on the water consecutively or done a longer expedition. And that's a fairly, I think there's enough of a difference that it's really noticeable.
Oh, it's a huge difference. Yeah, that's significant.
In evaluating people, because that's part of my job as both a consultant and as a coach and trainer in the outdoor industry, we talk about levels of competence. There's conscious competence and unconscious competence, and I think it's easy enough to say, yeah, this person's competent, but that's as far as most programs will go. Whereas you only really get an idea of how competent they are when it's absolutely needed, and there's no time to think about the process that they're supposed to be competent in. You just have to do it. It's like river rescue or managing a group during a inland tropical storm or something like that.
Yeah, and if I guided on the lower current and upper current, and so if that's all the guiding experience you have, 99% of the time it's a sunny day, 99% of the time nothing goes wrong, 99% of the time the people get in the boat, they go down the river, they have lunch, they go down the river, they get out of the boat, and they go home. It's no big deal. But if you're out on a multi-day expedition on the Karnali River in Nepal, and monsoons roll in and the river comes up 500 CFS, and it's just a whole different environment. So you've got to have all those experiences, and it just makes you more valuable. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I had a buddy who was in charge of training us as kayakers, and he said, if you really want to get a lot of river experience, then you go to Costa Rica, where there is always rafting to be had of one level or another. There's just way more river days out there than almost anywhere else.
Mm-hmm. And it's the variety of river days. If it's sunny all the time, that's different than going out there and being there in a storm or having something breaks. You got to fix it. Yeah, it's totally different. Yeah. We're going to take a little break and give some love to our sponsor, Wolfgang Man and Beast. Wolfgang Man and Beast celebrates the unique relationship between dogs and their people. They offer American-made leashes and collars for your pup using only the finest American leathers and textiles, plus a distinctive collection of T-shirts and hats for you. Built domestically and transported minimally, they'll be replaced rarely. Visit theoutdoorbizpodcast.com/Wolfgang and get your pup a new leash or collar today. I see tails wagging furiously in your future. Now, back to the show. This is a question I've been asking a lot of people, because over here in the U.S., we're getting a major influx of folks coming into the outdoors, which is great, particularly up here in the Eastern Sierra. There are all the folks coming from L.A. to recreate, and we love that. But, the way they use the outdoors, they're not as educated, or, they just don't have the experience. So do you have any thoughts on how we can educate these new participants about the basics of camping and hiking and not pooping in the parking lot, for example? It's that level. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I know that California is getting it probably harder than most places.
I'm sure it's happening all over. I think Colorado too, and Wyoming. I was talking to somebody in Wyoming the other day. Yeah, there's just, and we got to get out. I get it. It's great. We love you out here, but
especially during this pandemic. But
right.
I think the cool thing about COVID is that a lot of things have switched online. So there's a lot of outdoor resources right now that are just like online basic technical training. So like how to poop in the woods, or of course, Leave No Trace is a great tool. If it were up to me, that would be a requirement for high school, along with CPR,
awesome.
aid, and ED.
That'd be great.
I don't think that there's any downside to requiring that as a graduation requirement.
You could broaden the aspect of PE and make it not so sports related. I love that.
Yeah, actually, Oregon has started to do that. So they started outdoor school, which they passed legislation to fund outdoor school permanently. And they're taking funds that they're made off of the lottery to apply towards outdoor school.
That's great.
So yeah, as much as I don't like the idea of gambling funding it, I think it is what it is. So I know that the lottery does help support roads and the outdoor school initiatives. So it's great. But I think we all used to go to camp for summer, or there was a 6th grade camp I remember in California.
Yeah, that's where I taught.
That was kind of a vacation.
Yeah,
and it was nice, but you still were in cabins. You weren't really camping.
Right.
So I think it would be great if instead of PE, or in addition to PE, or as an elective to replace PE, if outdoor sports became the next piece of public education or even private education.
Yeah.
I was living in Bend, Oregon and Redmond. And so I've been a little bit spoiled in that I know that especially there that the outdoor sports, coaching outdoor sports, training young athletes, and leading recreational trips has just boomed.
Yeah.
And they have the facilities to do that. Whereas like in areas where I grew up, like Davis and Sonoma, it's not really as available. Like road biking is about the most conducive to outdoor sports out there. And there's of course motor sports, but we didn't have the same level of access.
Yeah, I think it's available. I just don't think every community takes advantage of it. Like I taught at an outdoor school in San Diego. All the San Diego City school kids went to camp from 3rd grade on up, and the 3rd graders went to the Balboa Park, and they did all kinds of outdoor activities and Balboa hiking and whatnot. And then eventually they graduated to 6th grade camp. They came up to Palomar or went to Cuyamaca and spent a week. So they spent nights in cabins. We went on all-day hikes. And I think some places it's a further drive than others, but all these mountains have these, these camps that are sitting dormant all winter because they're a summer camp. And I think there's ways to maximize that so that everybody gets an outdoor experience. That'd be interesting to work towards.
Yeah, I used to drive by one of those properties, I should say, in Oregon, and always wondered, like, what is that doing sitting empty for so long?
Yeah. It sits empty all winter. Exactly.
Because it's snowing out doesn't mean you can't be outside playing in it.
Exactly. Right. In some places I get it, the roads aren't plowed to that area, but maybe we can figure out a way to, put people back to work and do all these things. Anyway.
It costs a lot to plow a road every now and then.
I know. Yep.
As far as going back to the question of education in regards to how newcomers to the outdoor industry can be assisted in their education level. Mm-hmm. Something I've seen happen before, and probably will be more conducive to this happening when we're not in the middle of a pandemic, but a lot more public talks, or we had a lot of pub talks in the Bend area, where people would come and present at, a bar or a brewery, and they'd present on a specific topic. It could be, avalanche awareness or leave no trace workshop, or the trail maintenance communities in that area are really active and work really hard with the city to make that possible. But here in Puerto Rico, we have similar struggles. Like, there's a lot of active community groups that go and clean up the beach all the time. Mm-hmm. And I would say even as many people, if not far more people, that don't see the value to throwing their trash in a dumpster. Literally chuck it out the back of their car or throw it out into the bushes because it'll get covered and just disappears. But the idea that it actually disappears, hasn't really sunk in. So that I think is more of a public education piece. Like I said before, that you have to kind of start with a younger population.
Yeah. Totally.
Unfortunately, try a combination of public initiatives and educational initiatives.
I like the Pub Talks idea. That could happen all over. That's pretty cool. You can teach them, or just make a presentation. You're not necessarily going to teach them because they've got to want to learn, but at least you could expose them to all these activities and how to participate and have a good time, so
yeah. Yeah, totally.
What other outdoor activities do you participate in? Sounds like you do a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I try and mix it up quite a bit. I recently have been working on my certification for open water certification for scuba through SSI, which is great because they have online resources, and then we also hop in the water and go out and dive literally a mile from my house, which is fantastic. So we've been working on that with some other folks. And I loved diving and swimming out here, doing a lot more of the saltwater stuff, which I didn't get exposed to as much.
Not much of that in Bend.
There's really not.
And you're far from it.
And even less, well, it's like 3 hours away, 2.5 hours away to the coast from Bend, which is not too bad, but it's really cold, that water. So I guess I'm a little bit of a pansy. But there was even less of it in Utah, Nevada, and Idaho, where I did most of my work. So yeah, I'm glad to be living in a tropical paradise, so to speak, and taking advantage of learning new fishing and
cool.
All about that. But in general, just mountain biking here has been good. I've got a lot of trails, and the climbing here is, to quote a buddy of mine, he said that it's the best limestone climbing in the United States and be competitive with what they have over in Europe.
Impressive. Okay.
Yeah. And my hope is that grows. I know that he's very involved in that. So yeah, the limestone climbing I haven't taken as much advantage of lately, but working on the house is kind of
the house. Yeah, other things get in the way. Yeah, I get it. Do you have any suggestions or advice for folks wanting to get into the outdoor adventure biz?
So I got in more along the lines of guiding first. And I would say that if I could go back and do it over again, I would have been more involved, both growing up and in college, with community outdoor events. So doing more backpacking trips with larger groups and learning more of the leadership in the outdoors piece. Just getting more exposure would be helpful. And then compile some basic skills. So one of the reasons I was able to get that job was I leveraged getting my L&T trainer certification and my wilderness advanced first aid certification. And I think I took a course at school that was intro to outdoor leadership. And that's really all I had done by the time I kind of launched into working in the outdoors. I go back and forth as to whether a degree is really necessary. As far as from the hiring side, like, does a degree actually make a good guide?
Right.
In my experience, some of the best guides I've ever worked with, they don't have degrees in the outdoors, but degrees are becoming more and more a baseline, for better or worse. I'd say worse.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Just in that it saddles people with a lot of debt that they have to pay off, and the outdoor industry hasn't yet risen its pay rates to match the requirements of a degree. The other thing is finding a balance between, once you're in the outdoor industry, finding a way to bridge your gap between what you want to know and what you do know now, and finding someone that can kind of mentor you through that process. So I actually ended up shifting focus for a period of time to get a break from wilderness therapy, because it can be pretty grueling emotionally and psychologically. And started raft guiding. And that it was really valuable to have talked to other raft guides and learned from them what skills to pursue and how much exposure to pursue in different areas, and really I ask for a lot of feedback. It's I think one of the things that's made the biggest difference for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think all those working with people jobs, whether it's guiding or working at a, sixth grade camp or whatever. I mean, once you have that experience of basically herding people and having to, talk to a group and keep them all entertained and paying attention and whatnot, that's a valuable skill that you don't get in some of these other things. So even at retail, you don't get that at retail. I mean, you go one-on-one with a customer and stuff, but you don't get that group dynamic. So I think that's huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say that the most intense, in-depth training I ever got in that realm on like the soft skills and the meta skills was definitely from wilderness therapy. And then when I started to wrap that with rafting, it was fun in that, for the first time I was able to like raise my voice and direct people, which in wilderness therapy backfires like crazy.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because most of the students are resistant to that approach, which makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah.
Rafting can be really a fun experience, and the guides are responsible for how the rafting experience goes, no matter how their customers are. So I think that was kind of cool, and that very empowering, and dumps a lot of responsibility back on the guide. So that I think it's valuable to seek out positions that can be antithetical to one another, or could be varied in their approach.
Variety is good, right? Yeah,
very different from therapy. I saw this great spectrum where recreation on one side and therapy on the other, and then in the middle, kind of the outdoor industry was broken up as far as guiding goes, or experiential industry was broken up as recreation and then education and development. So development would be more like Knowles or Outward Bound, and then therapy on the far side. So that's kind of like a linear spectrum, but I would say try them all out. I mean, you don't know what's going to really light your fire. Maybe you're more of an educator, maybe you're more into the therapeutic stuff, but you can't really go wrong with having more experience. But yeah, finding more ways to pile on the responsibility and the technical skills and have fun.
You can always get that. Yeah, that seems simpler to get, but I think that trying out everything is good advice. That's one of the things I went through when the program I went through had 4 disciplines, and I was obviously hardcore into outdoor, but in the undergrad program, you had to take classes in all 4 disciplines, which helped round you out and reinforce that, yes, I do want to go into outdoor. Some people switch gears. They got into I think they called it therapeutic rec at the time, and completely shifted into that. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I see a lot of recreation in wilderness therapy. There's a lot of folks with that degree.
Yeah. How about your favorite piece of outdoor gear under $100?
I labored with this question for a long time.
This is probably the toughest question I ask people.
I know. When you've been guiding for a while, you kind of go through phases of being like a serious gear junkie and other phases of being a minimalist. And I kind of vacillate a little bit. I certainly have a whole kit of whitewater gear that I love, but I thought of like across all of the sports that I do, what always stays with me, and that's, a Leatherman is worth its weight in gold in the outdoors. So I have a Leatherman, I think it's a Surge, and I love that thing. It's fantastic.
It's come up a lot. Yeah, that's the tool, whether it's a Leatherman or one of the other tools. It's that's a huge piece. Yeah, I would support that 100%.
They can be kind of pricey, but you can find them used. And the cool thing about Leatherman is you can find them used, and then they will repair them for pretty cheap, which is great.
Cool. That's good to know. I didn't know that.
Yeah. They just have to ship them back and forth, but
yeah, that's a good one. If you could have a huge banner at the entrance to the OR show or the Big Gear show or one of the other adventure shows, what would it say?
Oh man. So back to being the minimalist a bit. have never worked in the products industry other than a brief stint in working for an app startup called Tribe Pilot, which is like the first outdoor trip planning app. You can trip plan with your friends, which was a great idea. And then we also struggled a lot with, how much exposure do people really need to create to these locations, go viral. But so I digress a little bit. As far as, what would I say? Less is more. I know that Patagonia is really big on this now, which I find slightly ironic, but gear doesn't really make the leader. It's the experience that does. And gear is just a tool to get you to a location, to get you the experience. And more, I think it's becoming more of a fashion statement, more of a who's who and who's wearing what kind of thing. And it kind of saddens me because all that stuff eventually ends up in a landfill. And so the hard thing for me is like, if I were to put up a banner, it's, gear doesn't make the leader, experience does.
That's good.
And pick wisely because you can only carry so much.
Yeah, we make a lot of stuff, man. It's kind of overwhelming at some point. Yeah. As we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to ask or say of our listeners?
I'd love to hear from listeners about things they'd like to hear about in a blog or dedicated to outdoor leadership, wilderness therapy. I'm just putting together topics right now. I'll be posting on a blog on my website. So
cool.
Not to co-opt your group, but I'm curious what more can be done to help educate folks and bring about new perspectives in the outdoor industry and outdoor leadership. So.
No, I love it. Yeah. And where can people find you if they want to follow up?
So the website I have is sojournconsulting.org. We're also on Instagram and Facebook and all that.
Cool.
Yeah.
We'll link to all that in the show notes so people can reach out and give you their ideas. I'm sure they have some.
Yeah. Rick, so when are we going to see you in Puerto Rico next?
I don't know. I've never been there. It's interesting. That's I've been all around the world and other places, but haven't been to Puerto Rico. And it comes up a lot in some conversations that I've been having lately. And there's a couple of pretty major online educational folks that have headquarters in Puerto Rico. Guys that have podcasting, the big domo in podcasting. John Lee Dumas lives in Puerto Rico, and he's got a big podcasting education thing, and other people tied around that stuff. So I guess I need to make a visit. Check it out.
Yeah, come check it out.
Once the pandemic mellows out, I'll head that way.
Sweet. We'd love to put you up.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good. Well, thanks for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, likewise. Appreciate you having me.
All right, take it easy. If you want more of the Outdoor Biz Podcast, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Be sure to go to the outdoorbizpodcast.com where you find all the episodes, show notes, and much, much more. Until next time, be sure to make time to get outside.